I was having y'all, your boy Rico from Street Scores, and man, it's a lot going on. First of all, as a Georgia Bulldog fan, Nick Saban retiring is a huge sigh of relief. But of course, I have nothing but respect for him. I mean, the fact that we're even relieved is just shows you how dominant he's been. We just for some reason can't get over that hump. We've only beat him like once, even though we have 2 chips. We didn't play him the second one, and that's just super off topic. I could go on a rant about that, but either way, I just want to salute Nick Saban and everything he's done for Alabama. He made the SEC really fun. But we're here to talk about all of these other coaches, these NFL ones in particular, because there's some coaches out there either moving on, fired, parting ways, whatever, that the Commanders may want to look into. Now, I'm going to go ahead and preface this with the fact that I doubt we get either of the 2 head coaches that we're going to talk about today, in Pete Carroll or Mike Vrabel, but we got to talk about whether it would be a good idea, why and why not. And then also, maybe Giants Don Wink Martindale, do we want to go and get him as a defensive coordinator? And we also got to talk about the whole drama behind that and how he became available in the first place. That is a crazy situation. Do we even want to put up with something like that? And even though it's more so on the Giants end than his, there's a lot of drama around him right now. Is it worth it? And should we just go ahead and make a trade? Giants, y'all get Jack Del Rio. We'll take Wink Martindale and we can keep it pushing, man. You know what I'm saying? But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned because, again, I'm coming with constant updates. I was just super busy, had to get the dogs groomed today and stuff like that, so I wasn't able to do as many videos as I wanted. But technically, last night I put out a video like 4 a.m. So technically I did do 2 videos today, including this one that's coming out. So, but tomorrow I'm probably going to do like 2 or 3, man. We have so much work to do, so many video ideas, so many things. I'm looking at the screen right now and I'm almost overwhelmed, but I'm super excited because there's so much content out there. There's never nothing to talk about. So make sure y'all stay tuned. And let's go ahead and get to this video. Let's get it. All right, so let's talk about Pete Carroll first. Head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, well, ex-head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. He is now out of the Seahawks situation, and they're saying that maybe he'll come back and stay with Seattle in a different capacity, but for the first time in 14 years, the Seahawks will have a new head coach. It feels like he's been there forever. He's literally been there half my life. So Pete Carroll not being the head coach for the Seahawks is weird, man, because I was too young to even really understand how impactful he was for USC. I mean, looking back, but like when he was actively coaching at USC, I was too young to really fully comprehend what was going on. So Pete Carroll to me is Seattle Seahawks head coach, and that's it. He's been there for so long. This is so weird, man. I know I'm not a Seattle Seahawks fan. I'm not even a fan of a team in the NFC West. Of course, I'm diehard Commanders and all of that, but this is still really weird. I mean, again, he's been the Seattle Seahawks head coach for half my life. This is really weird. But when he had his press conference and it was super emotional, man, I really felt for him. I still can't tell entirely if this is his decision or the Seahawks decision. I don't know what's going on, but the way that he was talking in his press conference and Adam Schefter pointed it out, it sounds like he's somebody that's still interested in coaching, and maybe just the Seattle Seahawks are just ready to move on and they're just letting him leave with grace rather than firing him. With this being arguably the most competitive head coach and free agency hiring cycle market arguably ever, with the likes of Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, Mike Vrabel's now available, Jim Harbaugh's potentially looking at coming back to the NFL. You have Mike MacDonald. I mean, you have so many options, man. Veterans, young prodigy type of guys that are like 36, 37 years old. If there's a hiring cycle to look for a head coach, it's this one, which is why I'm so happy that the Commanders are now in search for one right now, because this was the best time to do it, man. And so maybe the Seahawks were just looking at the landscape like, man, we're not going to have another head coach and hiring cycle like this one in a long time, at the very least, probably. So let's go ahead and jump on this while we can. We love Pete Carroll and all of that, but let's go ahead and make a move while we can. Again, it sounds like he's somebody that still wants to coach. and the way it sounded in his press conference, we'll see if he ends up going to a different team. Or, like I already said earlier, people are saying that he may stay with the Seahawks, but in a different capacity. Maybe some type of front office, team building, personnel role type of thing, which a lot of people thought Ron Rivera may transition into as of like this time last year, maybe, or maybe a little bit before that. And before we got to the point where we just wanted them flat out fired, like, you got to go, I don't care what happens, but you got to leave the burgundy and go no matter what. Before Josh Harris bought the team and stuff like that, basically, we were saying, hey, man, Ron Rivera, I'll be all right with him, being some type of culture guy in the front office. But when it comes to making decisions on player personnel, draft picks, and free agency, nah, I'm good. And we're clearly definitely good on him being a head coach as well. We'll see what Pete Carroll decides to do. That's going to be something I'm definitely going to monitor, because that's just a really interesting situation. Even though has nothing to do with the Commanders, really interesting. But you never know, because he may be a candidate. You never know if Adam Peters comes in and we end up hiring him, because he's probably candidate number one on the tier list from Josh Harris and company. He's my number one. But I honestly feel like, based on reports I've heard and articles I've read, John Com's podcast and stuff like that, it sounds like he's the number one candidate. And luckily for us, it also sounds like he's probably quite likely to end up our head of football operations, GM, whatever you want to call him. I think he's going to have full power of a lot of decision making that goes on for the Burgundy and Gold, and give it to him. Offer him even a little bit more power if that's what it takes to get him. But with him being in the NFC West for so long, working for the 49ers for so many years, he has to have a high level of respect for Pete Carroll. So maybe bringing over Adam Peters as president of football operations makes it more likely that we land a Pete Carroll or something like that, if that's the way that they want to go. I'd prefer by far to go again Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, Mike MacDonald, and maybe a few other guys before I would personally go with Pete Carroll. But you never know, man. That isn't what I would want to do. Rico of Street Scores, what I want to do, but I'm just throwing it out there that Adam Peters maybe increases your chances of that being fairly likely. Still highly doubt it. And again, I don't want to, but I just wanted to present that information to y'all. Also, now it's seeming like Dan Quinn, who is a guy that we've requested to interview, the Cowboys defensive coordinator, ex-head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, ex-defensive coordinator, and basically the orchestrator of the whole Legion of Boom that Seattle had, that had Pete Carroll looking so great, had Russell Wilson winning Super Bowls and things like that. Dan Quinn's defense, a lot of people are saying that he may potentially go back to Seattle and finally be a head coach there, which would be really interesting, because guys like Devon Witherspoon and all of those great defensive players, Tariq Woolen, would be so fantastic in his defensive system, man. They would ball out over there. I don't know about offense. Again, like I've already said, Dan Quinn, what he did to the Falcons, shouts out to you. I'm an avid Falcons hater, employee of the month level Falcons hater. Like, I should get paid for the level of hating I throw towards the Falcons. And I'm just so appreciative of as to what he did to them, setting them back for a few years. So with that in mind, I'm not sure if I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. I'm excited about Dan Quinn coming over to be a head coach, but to come back as a defensive coordinator, wonderful. But I don't think he's going anywhere, anything less than being a defensive coordinator for the Cowboys. He wouldn't make that lateral move. If he's leaving the Cowboys, he's leaving to go be a head coach. And I'm not sure if Seattle fans really want that. The Seattle Seahawks organization probably does, but I don't think Seattle, if you watch with how Dan Quinn ran the Falcons, you don't want him as your head coach. But also remember, Dan Quinn worked with Seattle from 2009, 2010, and then again 2013 to 2014, putting together that Legion of Boom situation. And he's been doing an excellent job with the Cowboys. And when it comes to being a defensive coordinator, everywhere he goes, it's dominant. It's really good at the very least. But again, as a head coach, I'm not necessarily sure about that one. But it's also being reported from Ian Rappaport that Dan Quinn would likely be considered as a strong candidate to replace Pete Carroll as he leaves as a head coach. So now we know, according to sources, that the Seattle Seahawks are probably looking into Dan Quinn. And I don't think Dan Quinn is high on our list. I think that's more so like a due diligence interview. And again, for reasons I've already stated with how he set the Falcons back, I don't want him to come over here as a head coach and set us back. Again, I love him as a defensive coordinator. Don't necessarily love him as a head coach, me personally. I could be wrong, but I just not feeling it. And then also, it's reported that members of the Seattle Seahawks coaching staff have been told they are free to look elsewhere for jobs. The new coach will have full autonomy over the staff, which is really interesting because Shane Waldron, their offensive coordinator, is a pretty good offensive coordinator out there. So if you're thinking about going defensive-minded head coach like a Mike MacDonald, then Shane Waldron would actually be a pretty good idea as an offensive coordinator, a guy that may not be looking for head coaching jobs. Because right now, again, you're not getting Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick as an offensive coordinator. That's not going to happen. They're leaving where they currently are to be head coaches, plain and simple. That's it. So run their entire show. So if you hire a Mike MacDonald, the best you could arguably do at offensive coordinator is probably a Shane Waldron. I mean, I would love like if he were to bring a Todd Monken with him, but I would highly doubt that happens. But yeah, man, if you're thinking defensive-minded head coaches, Sean Waldron may be your guy. I mean, the way that he revived Geno Smith's career, I mean, he completely turned that narrative around like a complete 180. He was the genius behind that situation. And the Seahawks have great receiver talent, but I don't see them as just this high-powered offense. I feel like Shane Waldron had those guys overachieving over there, just top to bottom talent-wise. They have talent all over the place, especially in the receiving core. And Geno Smith has always been naturally talented, but I think Shane deserves a lot of credit for what they're doing out there. But also with Pete Carroll out there, now there's more competition out there for top head coaches because now the Seattle Seahawks may enter their name into the ballot for the guys that are trying to win over a Ben Johnson, Mike MacDonald, and Bobby Slowick, who are my three favorite potential head coaching candidates for us. So it's kind of like a bad thing as well because now this is just another team out there trying to steal Ben Johnson away from us is how I'm looking at it, honestly. But at the same time, I'm not even sure if one of those guys would want to take on that Seattle Seahawks job. So maybe they aren't in the way as much as I'm afraid that they may be because the Seattle Seahawks job is not that great. I mean, shouts out to Grant Paulson for wording it perfectly. They're stuck between close and needing to reboot as a 25 and 26 team over the last 3 years. That ugly middle, that perpetual average is the worst place you can be in football. I've been trying to tell y'all about that for years. They also don't have an attractive quarterback situation because if Shane Waldron leaves, does Geno Smith just revert back to what he was? Also, they ranked 27th in Pro Football Focus's composite asset rankings of draft capital and cap space this offseason. So you don't even have a lot to work with to make an immediate change for this team versus us, where we're number one. I'm going to do a whole video on that separately. Maybe that'll be tomorrow or something like that. But just a sneak peek, I am working on a video that somebody, I got to figure out who it was, but I saw it. Shouts out to Grant Paulson for tweeting it out there. There's a graphic of them ranking basically who has the best capital this offseason as far as like a combination of draft capital, a combination of cap space, all rolled into basically who is the team that has the biggest ability to really turn a franchise around or to make real moves to have an immediate impact, especially for a potential head coach coming here for the first time. And we rank number one in that. So I'm going to do a whole video on that and why we rank number one, who's below us, and why, and things like that. But also, shouts out my boy Linnell Willingham on Twitter. He brings up a great point, though, that on the other side, the Seahawks may be an attractive destination because they have two bookend offensive tackles. They have a great cornerback tandem, strong infrastructure already in place with John Schneider. And so it's kind of like I see the good and the bad. I don't think the good outweighs the bad enough to skip us in line. I think if Ben Johnson does actually want to come to the Commanders and also likes the Seahawks as well, I think he would prefer us over them. Thank goodness. Now moving on to the next coach that was recently let go, fired, whatever you want to call it, Mike Vrabel of the Titans, man. This is crazy. The Titans have fired head coach. This is not like a graceful thing like what Pete Carroll was, kind of like he walked away, mutual parting, whatever. No. Titans fired Mike Vrabel. They're sick of him. Vrabel led Tennessee to 4 consecutive winning seasons after arriving in 2018, but the Titans have experienced back-to-back frustrating seasons, finishing multiple games under 500 both times. And I mean, it always seems like they have this momentum, and then towards the end of the season, the wheels just fall off, especially this season. They had such a great opportunity to make the playoffs and really to be a pretty good team, especially with Will Levis, probably exceeding a lot of people's expectations. And it just seems that every time they get close, the wheels just fall off and it doesn't matter. And maybe they're just sick of it. But at the end of the day, Mike Vrabel, I don't care what anybody says, he's a good coach. He's on the market. Somebody's going to be willing to go get him for whatever it takes, man. I guess they're just sick, again, that perpetual average. Maybe his problem is he has that perpetual average thing going on. Again, the worst thing you can wish on your worst enemy fan base is them being perpetually average. Never good enough to win anything meaningful, but also never bad enough to have a high enough draft pick to draft generational talents. Of course, you can still draft great guys in other rounds as well, but having a higher draft pick obviously increases your chances of being able to do that. And also, just as far as even having a higher draft pick to trade back and to get more draft picks to get more chances at drafting elite guys later in the draft. So, yeah, that perpetual average, man, I understand. If I'm a Titans fan, I'd probably want to move on as well. I'm not going to lie. But again, he is a really good coach as far as being like a super disciplined culture guy. He brings that at the very least. And if he hires the right offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator to run the show, I think wherever he ends up going, he can be successful and maybe get over that perpetual average hump. But at the end of the day, man, this was probably destined to happen with all of that chaos. Remember that drama during the draft, this past draft, the 2023 draft back in April? Man, you could just kind of see it. It was like the writing was on the wall, man. But let's look at the positives at Mike Vrabel right now. Why we should go get him. I mean, he's definitely a very intriguing candidate. Nikki Javala, reported as very close to the Josh Harrison organization, the Commanders and all of that, said, quote, "I think you have to at the very least make a call. He immediately becomes a very intriguing candidate," unquote. And the reasons why? Well, first of all, like I said earlier, you could argue that him being on the market only helps increase this being the best head coach and free agent class we've probably ever seen. Like, it's ridiculous, the hiring cycle. But Vrabel on his own, man, again, a great motivator. It seems like he can evaluate talent pretty well as well. I'm not going to do like a deep dive into the positives of Mike Vrabel because, spoiler alert, I'm going to go ahead and let you know, again, he doesn't even crack my top 5 coaches that I want. But that's for what we want to do. Another organization like the Patriots, I think he's perfect. But for what I want the Commanders to do, the vision I have for them being analytically based, and I want to go young, offensive-minded head coach, or even young, defensive-minded prodigy head coach like a Mike MacDonald, I'm good. But basically all of this happened because it seems like Vrabel is making it known to the ownership, pick between me and the GM that you hired 11 months ago. They have not seen eye to eye. Again, this dates all the way back to when they had that draft chaos and drama going on, and they did not share the same vision. So all in all, it just wasn't meant to be. The GM, head coach couldn't see eye to eye. Vrabel was like, well, y'all chose him, I'm out. Like, y'all can go ahead and let me go, do what you got to do. Please get me out of here. Let me go somewhere where I can run the show type of thing. Maybe he's looking for a coach-centric model. And that's another reason why the Patriots are probably perfect. Now, why we should not go and get a Mike Vrabel? Well, first of all, he's a defensive-minded coach who has mostly presided over very bad defenses, like bottom 5 EPA per play 2 of the past 4 years, which is very questionable. You're a defensive-minded head coach, but your defenses haven't been great. And then again, like I've already said, even with me, as bad as I want Mike MacDonald, he's in my top 3, even though Ben Johnson's my number 1. Mike MacDonald's probably my number 2, at worst number 3 at potential head coach candidates out there. I'm going to keep saying it. When you hire a defensive-minded head coach, getting your offense right is very difficult because you got to find the right offensive coordinator, and offensive coordinators are always being stolen away from teams to go from being an offensive coordinator to be given a promotion, more power, more control for another team and become their head coach. So when you do, which it's already hard enough to find one really good offensive coordinator, but when you do, teams are going to do everything that they can to take them away from you, and then you got to go do it again. Now you got to go find another great offensive coordinator. Do we feel like it's worth it to go through all of that with Mike Vrabel as your defensive-minded head coach? With Mike MacDonald, yes, sure. I'm perfectly fine with that. We'll figure it out. We'll just bring him in. We'll find the offensive coordinators over and over again. It is what it is. But when it comes to Mike Vrabel, I don't know, man. Also, shouts out to NFL Draft Bites for this. Fact is, Mike Vrabel has proven himself enough in the league to dictate the organizational structure. He'd get complete Sean Payton-like control from multiple organizations if available. Contract status is a bit cloudy, but a power play is underway. Mike wants out of Tennessee. So again, basically what he's saying right there, like I foreshadowed earlier, like I briefly mentioned, he's probably going to end up running the show like how Ron Rivera ran it here. Bill Belichick was running it for the Patriots. It's going to be a coach-centric model where he's completely running the show. The reason he's literally leaving the Titans is because he disagreed with the vision that the GM had. He wants to go be the GM, the head coach, the everything for an organization wherever he ends up going. And we already know we're not doing that. I don't want to do that. But luckily, Josh Harris has already made it known that we're not doing that. With how aggressive they are being right now, we're trying to look for a president of football operations, GM, and Adam Peters, Ian Cunningham, Alec Hallaby. We're literally interviewing all the top potential guys in that position. Mike Vrabel wouldn't even want to come here even if we wanted to. And thank goodness we do not want to. But again, when you're looking at New England, I'm thinking that's pretty much a lock. I mean, I wouldn't put my life savings on it, but if I had to put any money, like if it was a demand, I had to put money on one team for him to land on, I think it's the Patriots, man. I would be shocked if the Patriots don't do everything in their power to get him, because they're probably just as surprised as a lot of us that he's even available. That probably wasn't even in their vision, and they were ready to move on from Bill Belichick before they even knew Mike Vrabel was available. Now that he's available, it's like I wouldn't be surprised if they do everything in their power to go and get him, to convince him to come be their head coach and run the show like Bill Belichick did. I mean, the Patriots are clearly okay with that, and maybe they would be the team that would allow Mike Vrabel to do exactly what he wants to do. But again, with as fast as the Titans moved on from Vrabel, instead of even trying to trade for some draft picks, and they probably would have gotten some great value back if they just would have waited and been patient about it, that tells me they have a big hire in the works, and that scares me, man. They must be really excited about the new guy, and they don't even want to play games. I mean, of course, there's the chaos, there's the drama, GM and head coach not seeing eye to eye, but they could have just been patient and waited. They probably could have gotten at least some later draft picks for Mike Vrabel by trading them to potentially like a team like the Patriots or something like that, just like how the Broncos had to do it to get Sean Payton away from the Saints. I wouldn't be surprised if a team was willing to do that. The fact that they just went ahead and just like, man, just go. I don't care. We'll give you your money. We don't even want draft picks in return. Just please leave us alone. Like, that shows that the drama is really bad, and or that they already have a guy in mind. And for them to be that jumpy and that anxious about it, like, let's do it, let's go ahead, let's move fast, I am worried about it potentially being one of the three guys I want the most. Again, in Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, or Mike MacDonald. Hopefully I'm just overthinking things. Hopefully that's not the truth, but I just felt like that was a thought to put out there. Now, lastly, before we get up out of here, we got to talk about Giants defensive coordinator Don Wink Martingdale, man. A top defensive coordinator is now available. Sources say the Giants and DC Don Wink Martindale are parting ways. Let's go about this in chronological order, first of all, because this is a crazy, chaotic situation that just happened here, man. This is insane. Martindale interviewed for head coaching jobs in the past, and he could probably get good looks as well this offseason, but I doubt it. I think he's probably just going to end up being a defensive coordinator elsewhere. But let's just go in chronological order. So apparently Wink Martindale stormed out of the Giants building a couple of days ago during a meeting with Brian Daboll, and the team hasn't been able to get in touch with him ever since, to a certain point. That's what the tweet says. This is from January 9th. They got in touch with him now. This happened apparently on January 8th. We're talking on January 10th right now. But, and a lot of y'all are probably watching this on Thursday, January 11th. But either way, just keep up with me. Apparently, there was an extended period of time where he cussed out Brian Daboll, stormed out of the meeting, and then refused to answer any of their calls. And apparently he was spotted at the airport going back to Florida, and it was reported that he has resigned, but nothing was official yet. These were all rumors. It was all chaos. Now, we don't know about the going back to the airport and resignation part. That was apparently false rumors or something like that. But it's like being reported from several sources that he did, in fact, curse Brian Daboll out before storming out of that building. And so basically what happened, from everything that I'm seeing, reading, and hearing around the NFL, apparently he found out that the Giants fired a lot of the guys that he liked in the organization. And then the Giants were basically trying to get him retired, and them firing guys he liked was kind of a power play to force that, to kind of force his hand, like, hey man, we fired your guys, you might as well just walk out with them. Because basically they don't want to pay him. If they fire him, they have to pay him, basically. And so they were like, hey, man, just leave. Just go ahead and retire or forfeit the money or something like that. You don't even want to be here anyway. It's an uncomfortable situation. The guys you like are already gone. We did that on purpose, of course, and we just don't want to pay you. Can you just please walk away in a way to where we don't have to pay you, basically? And he said, nah, I'm not going out like that. And then today, early in the morning, Giants apparently it said that they had not begun a search for a new defensive coordinator yet and don't plan to do so as of right now. They want Wink Martindale to be the defensive coordinator unless and until he resigns. So the standoff continues. That's the best way to describe it. It's literally a standoff. But then by 2 p.m., Don Wink Martindale is resigning from his position as defensive coordinator with the Giants, and they have officially mutually agreed to part ways. The drama is over. I don't know what's going on. I feel like I know a lot of information, but I don't feel like I know enough information to put a lot of accurate opinions on this. All I know is this is ridiculous. This is absolutely insane. But at the same time, though, as far as the Commanders go, after we just went through the whole backstory of what it seems like would happen, I think he's good enough at defensive coordinator that it helps you go offensive-minded head coach if you want to do that. Because, like, again, Ben Johnson is my favorite candidate. Bobby Slowick is at the very least in my top 3 along with Ben Johnson. If you want to go offensive-minded head coach, which I believe Josh Harris probably prefers as well, I think this is a guy that kind of gives you the freedom to, like, yeah, we can go offensive-minded head coach and the defense will be handled. He's the type of guy that can come in and handle the defense, run that entire show on his own, and do a pretty good job. The Giants didn't end the season with great defensive stats and ranks, but just based off of what I've seen, I think he will be a pretty good defensive coordinator. I'm not saying that he's the best out there doing it, but I think he's pretty solid. I think if you were to get a Ben Johnson in a Martindale, I think you would actually be pretty straight. I think that could definitely actually work. But also on top of all of that, Giants, while we're here, we can make a little trade. You know what I'm saying? We'll give you Jack Del Rio and we'll take Martindale. Even, man. And I'm doing this out of the kindness of my heart, man. I'm giving y'all a nice little discount. I'm not even going to charge you. You know what I'm saying? It's because I like y'all, Giants. I really like y'all. So, hey, man, I'm giving y'all Jack Del Rio for free. It's an offer you can't refuse, man. Go ahead and take them. Please take them away from us, man. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel, and Don Wink Martindale. How do you feel about all of those situations? Do you want either of those 3 guys? Do you want the Seahawks offensive coordinator that's apparently probably about to be out of the job, and Shane Waldron? Would you prefer to bring him in if we go defensive-minded head coach like a Mike MacDonald? Any of those situations, let me know. Let me know if you agree with any of my points. If you disagree with any of my points, let me know all of that. Again, I'm trying my best to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible. But as you can see, I'm just going with video after video after video, super busy. So I really appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all stay tuned because more content on the way. Again, I'm working on like 2-3 videos coming out tomorrow, as in Thursday, January 11th. So stay tuned for all of that. And I'm going to keep you updated on every little thing going on with the Commanders. This is your one-stop shop for burgundy and gold news. I'll catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.